once again to Byron's Vego cooking show. I'm Byron. Today I'm doing curries. Those of you that know me know that I love curry, and so I'm going to start. I'm planning to do multiple curry episodes because there's so many good curries you can make. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with probably the two easiest curries I know. So the first one's dal. It's a staple. Dal is Hindi for lentils. So just using plain red supermarket lentils, which I've soaked. Just soak those overnight. Just, put them in some water with a little bit of salt. And the other one I'm going to do is a green bean curry. Now the green bean curry, a lot of us in the West, we think of curries as being that, the heavy, sort of saucy, greasy sort of things you get at Indian diners. And don't get me wrong, I've been known to eat plenty of those myself. But curry is a very broad term, and there's a lot of different styles of curries out there. So this green bean curry, some people when I've cooked it have been surprised to see a curry that looks like that. It's a dry curry, but it's absolutely delicious and it's super easy to make, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite things in the world to eat. So I'm going to start by putting on some rice. It's pretty rare that you eat curry without rice. So I've just got some nice basmati rice here that I bought from the Indian grocery store. And that's an important point, guys. You use the right rice for your dishes. I know a lot of people, just buy your plain, supermarket white long grain rice or whatever. And look, it really makes a big difference. You sort of think of rice as rice, but if you're making Indian style food, use basmati rice. If you're making Thai style food, use jasmine rice. It makes a big difference. So I'm going to put in 2 cups. Now with the basmati rice, and every variety of rice is different, but with the basmati rice, I find that generally 2 cups of rice to say 2 2/3 cups of water. So basically 1 1/3 cups for every cup of rice. I'm going to add some salt. And that's a matter of taste, so you add as much as you want, but always put in a little bit of salt. When you eat rice sometimes and there's just something not right about it, it's a little bit starchy or something like that, you need rice. You need salt in your rice, so add a little bit of salt. I'm also going to add just a little bit of turmeric. That'll do. And I'm going to also add some sultanas, because they're delicious. Now to that, I'll add my, like I said, 2 2/3 cups of water. Just before I do that, I'm also just going to add a little bit of sunflower oil to this rice. I always put a little bit of oil in my rice. It helps to stop it from sticking together too much, and it gives it a nice oily goodness, I suppose. So there's 2. And 2/3 cup. Now that's another thing. I always use filtered water when I'm cooking rice. I just find it tends to work, and it tends to taste a little bit better. So just sort of swish that around a little bit like that, and then put it on the rice cooker. Now, if you don't own a rice cooker, go and get one. Stop the video, get up, go to the shop, go and buy one right now. Every house should own a rice cooker. If you don't, I don't know what you're doing. You're doing it wrong. So go out and get a rice cooker. Okay, so I've got my rice on. So the next thing to do is to get the lentils happening. So I've just used one of these packs, 375 grams of lentils, and I've had it soaking in a bowl of water. Like I said, I added a little bit of salt to it. So just you just need to soak that basically overnight. Now that's not actually essential. I usually don't bother with that, to be honest. I've done that now. Basically, it's been explained to me. The reason why you soak it, it softens up the beans a bit, and basically when you cook it, they sort of hold their shape a bit better. You can do it without soaking them, and I've done that plenty of times. The only difference is it goes a little bit mushy, but the taste is basically the same. It just sort of doesn't present as well. So I thought, because I'm doing it for the show and I'm going to put it on camera, then, I may as well make that extra bit of effort, but it's not really essential. I've made dal heaps of times without soaking the lentils, and I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's wrong, you shouldn't do that. It really makes very little difference to the flavour. Okay, so I'm just going to strain the water. Okay, so I've strained those lentils now, separated the water from the lentils, and so what I'll do is I'll get it on. Okay, so I've got that on the small burner. It doesn't need to be super hot. Yeah, so first thing I'm going to do is add some sunflower oil. Okay, so quickly while that oil's heating up, I'm just going to cut up some of these Mauritian chilies from my garden. You can use whatever chilies you like, it doesn't really make a big difference. Okay, now remember what I said in my previous episode, always wash your hands after you've been touching chilies, yeah? Okay, so to that, I'm also going to add some curry leaves. About that many. And some whole grain mustard. You can just use mustard seeds. I use whole grain mustard, pretty much the same thing. Yeah. Like and some turmeric. This is good stuff, don't be afraid of it. Okay, so that's looking pretty excellent. So I'm just going to add the lentils to that, just like that. Give it a stir, and then I'm going to turn the heat down a bit. And basically we're just going to simmer this, it doesn't need to be cooked on high heat. Turn that heat up a bit more, and then I'm just going to add some water, like that. Okay, I'm going to leave that heat reasonably high just until we get that water bubbling, and then I'll turn it back down again. Now there's a million ways to make dal, right? Dal just means lentils, right? This one I'm doing is a really simple one, and I find with most things, and curries are the same, that the simple is often the best. I remember an old Indian fella that I worked with years ago once told me that with dal, that the more things you add to it, the more you actually ruin it. Yeah, so this one's real simple and it's delicious. Okay, so now that's on, I'm going to get my beans ready for my green beans. So yeah, so we've got the rice cooking, we've just started the dal, and I've got some just plain frozen green beans from the supermarket, and I'm gonna microwave them for about 10 minutes to defrost them and get them nice and warm. And then that green bean curry only takes a couple of minutes, so you basically do that at the end. Yeah. So like I said, I've got a bag of frozen supermarket green beans. So I've probably used about half the bag, maybe a little bit more, about 500, 600 grams, something like that. Cover this with a plate and microwave it. Okay, so I'm just going to give the dal a little stir. You just do that every couple of minutes. Mostly it does its own thing, it knows what it's doing, but you just got to give it a stir, make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom. See that lovely yellow colour from the turmeric? So while I've got a minute here, I'm just going to dice up some more chilies. Okay, so I've got some coriander here. Now that's going to just go on top of the dal at the end. Yeah, we don't put it in while we're cooking it. Just cut a bit off the top, cut it up nice and fine, and just sprinkle it on top of the dal as you serve it, basically. And I'm just going to put a lid on that dal for a minute just to help it heat up a bit quicker. Okay, so for this dal, I'm pretty much just using the leaves of the coriander. Now I often do use the stems in other dishes too, but just for this one, yeah, basically just a few leaves on top. You don't really need much at all. The coriander is very strong, and also, you know, you can get away without it. Like it's not 100% essential for the dish, but it's certainly, you know, it's a nice finishing touch. Do for that. Okay, I'm starting to get some pretty nice smells coming off that dal, and it's just dawned on me that I haven't added salt and pepper yet, so I better get on that. Probably better to add those at the start, but you know, probably not going to make a big difference. Okay, so I've just got those green beans out of the microwave. They've been in there, oh, it's probably closer to 7 minutes than the full 10, but I think they're mostly defrosted, pretty warm now. There's still a few cold patches, but that'll be fine. I'll heat up in the pan. Remember to give your rice a stir now and then. Okay, so that's bubbling away nicely now. So I'm just going to dice up these tomatoes. So I've got 1 tomato for the dal and 2 tomatoes for the green beans. Now, with both of these curries, in fact, you basically just add the tomatoes at the end. So you want to put them in, and you want the heat to sort of soften them up a bit and bring out some of the juices and flavours. But you kind of want it to mostly hold its shape. You don't want them to go all mushy. So what I do is I cut them up pretty, you know, into little cubes basically. Doesn't really matter how you slice them up. Now with the dal, as you're cooking it, just tasting it. Now mine's starting to thicken up, but it's not 100% cooked yet, so I'm just going to add a little bit more water. That should do it. And then just stir that through. So I'm just going to stick that lid on again, just to help bring that new water up to heat. Okay, so that dal's going pretty good and the rice is looking pretty good. It's still cooking. Now on the rice cooker, for those of you who haven't got one yet, go and get one. There's two settings, there's cook and warm. Yeah, so when you plug it into the power point, it's on warm straight away. And then once you fill it up with your rice and water, etc., you flick the switch to cook, right? And when the rice is cooked, like magic, it flicks up to warm. It's just one of those things. Just don't ask questions, just accept the fact that it works, yeah? So you'll actually hear that flick up, and that's, to me, that's the best thing about it, because it actually says, your rice is ready now. Yeah, thanks very much. So, get a rice cooker, yeah? All right, so, but I can see that most of the water's gone out of there. I can see that my dal's looking pretty good. So I'm going to get the green beans happening. Okay, hear that? That was the noise of the rice cooker. So my rice is done now, so that's great timing. So now with the warm setting, you can leave your rice in there with the lid on warm for hours, right? It's awesome. So yeah, seriously, get a rice cooker. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put some sunflower oil in my pan. Now traditionally Indian curries are made with ghee, which is unsalted butter, yeah? But you know, that's a bit fat for someone like me. So what I do is I use sunflower oil, which is really nice light oil. I particularly like sunflower over other vegetable oils because it's not a strong flavour, so it doesn't interfere with the flavour of what you're cooking. Whereas for something like, for instance, I love olive oil, but some types of foods it just doesn't belong in, and so for curries I often use, well, I basically always use sunflower oil, yeah? So like we did before, it's pretty similar. I've got the oil in there. I'm going to add some cumin seeds. Now that'll be enough. These are quite strong, so you don't need heaps of them. You get those sizzling away. Chili's in there. Oh, I love chili, I really do. Everything about it's great. Okay, next up I'm going to add my curry leaves. Now curry leaves can be hard to find at times, but it's really worth making the effort. More of that whole grain mustard, that really is great stuff. And again, turmeric. Yum. So basically what I'm trying to do is just mix all that stuff around. You can just smell the goodness coming off there. Add my green beans. stir. Salt. Pepper. Now this is so simple, but it's honestly one of the most delicious things you'll ever eat. Garlic's coming along nicely. Pretty good. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the dal's pretty much ready. So I'm going to take it off the heat. And I'm going to add that diced tomato. So that's just one diced tomato into the dal. And I'll save the coriander for when I serve it. Give that a stir through. Okay, so like I said before, you can get away without the coriander on the end, and you can even get away with doing the dal without the diced tomatoes as a finishing touch. But those two things really bring a lot to it, yeah? It's worth it. Okay, so those green beans are looking pretty great, so I'm going to add the tomatoes. I've got 2 diced tomatoes. Get them in there. And same thing, once we get to that point, just turn the heat off, stir them through. And then we're finishing off the green beans with some desiccated coconut, which just makes it awesome. So yeah, about that much. Okay, so that's the curries cooked. So I'll serve it up on a plate and we'll get eating. That's my lunch. Okay, so I've plated that up nicely. So what I like to do with my curries is I use my rice kind of like a bit of a dividing wall, so to speak. You might have seen those Indian steel dishes with the little, like, you know, sort of bowls cut out of them so you can keep all your curries separate. Well, I haven't got one of those, so what I do is I just use my rice as a dividing wall. And then the last thing I'm going to add here is some mango chutney. Again, I just bought this at the Indian shop, and this stuff's great. I love a bit of chutney on the side of my curry, so I'll just put some. Yeah, it looks like a good spot. That's delicious. So, as you can see, I've got my dal here. I've topped it with the coriander, my green beans, my rice with the turmeric and the sultanas, and a nice bit of mango chutney to finish it off. I think now all's left to do is take a picture of it and then eat it. So thanks once again for watching Byron's Vego cooking show. Definitely have a go at this stuff, man. They're really good. They're really easy, dirt cheap to make, and you can make big volumes of it and have, you know, you can be eating curry for days, and they're really good for you. So get into it.